Came here because my father-in-law's sister was married to Leo Kaplan's.
Oh, really? Oh.
My father-in-law's sister and Leo Kaplan's mother were brother and sister.
Oh, I didn't know.
And it was through them that my in-laws came here. And
was Harry a young boy then, or what?
Harry was a young boy. He graduated from Searles.
Yeah.
And I guess after that, he went back to New York. He wanted to live in the city, and my in-laws had the farm. Now, my grandparents came up here in 1932 and bought a farm on Lake Buell Road. They were not farmers, it was a summer home.
Oh, yeah.
It was a summer home for the whole family and so on. And that's how I came into the area. And some years later, after Harry Moskowitz had come back here and gone into business, the same business that Leo Kaplan was in, the cattle business, through friends of Harry Moskowitz's, he agreed to take me out and teach me how to drive.
That was the beginning.
That was the beginning. That was the first day. The second day, he said, I'm going to give you 6 months to make up your mind, but you're going to marry me.
You were 18.
Right. That was it. So I was married at 18 and a half. We did get married within 6 months. And, like all Jews, we had a bargain. I got a driver's license and a marriage license.
So what was this? You mentioned that your in-laws, your husband's family, had a farm. Was this a farm that they actually? This was not a summer place. This was an actual.
They
farm.
had an actual farm.
And what was that?
Cattle, and they made milk and.
Where was that?
Dairy farm.
Right on State Road. That was the house. The property that I.
Oh, really? That was their house.
Right. That was their house, and then we bought the farm from them.
And your mother-in-law, Mary, she lived there in the little house.
Right. She lived in the little house. They built that house. They took a half an acre of land before they sold the farm to us, and then we took over. We took over the farm. Harry had already been in the cattle business for some time. And it was after we got married, I guess, that they all decided that's probably not a good idea to have two families involved in this. So that was the way it went. We bought that part of the farm that my in-laws owned, and there was a part of the farm that Harry had bought years before. So we added the two together, and that was it. So that's it.
And how, do you know anything about how that family ended up farming in Great Barrington?
I told you, it was through, they came from New York. My father-in-law worked on buildings in New York. He was in high buildings, as a matter of fact. And I remember Harry telling me years and years ago, when he was a boy, he would get bottles of beer and climb up in these buildings and sell them to the...
That's great.
Right, to sell them to the other workers and so on. So it was through them, it was through Leo Kaplan's mother that he came here, his sister, my father-in-law's sister. Now, they had come here years before, and they lived in Sandersfield. And I don't know, Sandersfield or New Boston, somewhere out in the hinterlands.
Sandersfield.
Now, a lot of Jews were brought here.
In 1902.
Yeah, by the Rothschild, Baron Rothschild, who decided that Jews should learn how to be agriculturists.
And so he funded these
funded these people. A lot of them went into the chicken business. A few of them went into the...
He said it was farming, right?
Yeah.
In Sandersfield,
Yeah.
And it wasn't. One of the women told me, Mrs. Albert, do you remember her?
No.
She was the only one living when we came up in 1960. And the rabbi in Cedarhurst said to us, you live in, I said, we have a summer house in Sandersfield. Oh, he said, it's in the history books. This Pollock brought all the Jews up there to farm. And they lived there. So I went to her house, and I said to her, how was it? was he such a wonderful man? She said, I'm bested. She said, yes. She said, he tricked us. He said the farming was good. It was not good for farming, Sandersville. They all became chicken farmers.
And they became chicken farmers after they tried a broader
Well, no, they
kind of
all
farming.
came, this guy brought them up to Sandersville. People bought houses. It must have been maybe $200 or $300 for estate, of what would be
years ago,
estates.
right.
I know a girl, the Ann Hoffman, who was Ann Pinsky.
Well, the Pinsky family were here
Yeah.
for many, many
Yes.
years. They were among the first
And
group.
when they came up here, she hated it. And as soon as she was able to walk, she went to New York and went to the village. That's where I met her. And when we came, we used to go from New York. We used to hitchhike to Lenox, to Tanglewood. And she wanted to go with us. Another way, she said, we could stay at my mother and father's house. So we all looked and we said, what? We thought Jews only lived in New York.
Oh, no.
It was. I mean, wasn't, I don't know if you don't come from New York, but I lived in a ghetto. And,
Which part of New York did
well,
you live in?
they went to the east side. Like, it's no longer there. It's where the bridge is.
Like
yeah.
the Williamsburg
Yeah.
Bridge,
But
that
you
area.
see the name of the street.
Yeah.
Yeah, it became like, I suppose some union or something bought it up, and they have houses, they're very apartments are very expensive.
Let me tell you, they
But
are.
you go on with your thing.
What else can I tell you?
Well, we'll go around. I'll get
Now,
back.
why
I'll
don't you
have
tell
more to
about
ask you.
Harry's family?
All right, Harry's family. This is Harry married me, but before that, his sister Ruth, who was the oldest sister, married a Brickman. Now, Brickman were also an older family here in town, and the Brickmans, my brother-in-law's generation, owned different stores around town. Molly Cooper had the Cooper Hardware, and before that she had Greenfield Smoke Shop, which Ruth and Nate bought from her. So they were running Greenfield Smoke Shop for years. Then Herbie went into the bag business. In those years, the bag business was a big business because the farmers would have all of their feed in burlap bags, and you bought back the burlap bags and you sold them. So that was his business.
Yeah.
And then, of course, they
So
started
you
to go
travel
in-
from farm to farm.
Right, and then they started to make them out of...
All farms in the area.
Yeah. Oh, yes, there were many,
Everybody
many
had a
farms. Anyway, the feed started, was being put together in bags, in paper bags, no longer burlap bags.
Yeah.
So that was the end of that business. A friend of mine, Mary Cummins, whose husband was a chiropodist
I
here
told
in
you about
town,
him.
had started a shoe store. And I guess it was too much for them, for Mary and Bob. And so what happened then was my sister, I asked them if she would sell it to my sister-in-law and brother-in-law, to Ruth and Nate.
Yeah. When they did.
I mean to Herbie and Faye. I'm sorry, to
well,
Herbie
they
and
had
Faye.
a shoe store.
That's right, but they bought it from Mary Cummins. It was on the
Oh.
second floor on Railroad Street.
Oh.
And then they moved down to the Scott's building on the corner.
What year was it? Have you any idea? Long before I came.
Oh, many, many years ago.
Were you here when they opened up the shop?
I was the one that was instrumental in getting them the business because they didn't have any money. And Mary Cummins was a good friend of mine, and so there was somebody else who was interested in buying the business, but she sold it, she allowed me to buy it, so.
But you were quite young. Was it in 10 years or 5 years
Oh,
of you being here?
yeah, probably somewhere around
Yeah,
that.
so it was in the early 20s, I suppose, huh?
No, in the early 40s or the late 40s or the
Because
era.
we came here in 1960.
Yeah, well, and Ruth and Nate had Greenfields at that point,
Yeah.
and Herbie and Faye had the shoe store right on
Yeah.
Main Street. But it had started on the second floor by Mary Cummins,
So
Mary and Bob Cummins.
But originally,
Yeah.
every retail store in Great Barrington was Jewish.
At one point.
99% Jewish.
Yes, not all of them, but a lot of them.
Well, 99%. They were all.
Well, let's see, on Railroad Street, there was, at one point, Mary Cummins' business on the second floor. There was Harry Dakin's business. The Nagers had two businesses in town. He had a frozen food place,
Right.
Saul Nager, years ago. That was also on Railroad Street. And then there was Harry Dakin's business,
With
and then
Jan.
When did they
Gans's.
come? I've no idea.
The Dakins?
Yeah.
Oh, this was that very interrelated family. The Rapports, the Dakins, and the Nagers were all not intermarried. Let me see if
But
I can
married to
explain
each-
it. Harry Dakin's sister was Molly Nager.
Oh, okay.
Saul Nager's sister was Sarah Rapport. And so that's,
Yeah, right down
yeah,
there.
the whole
Yeah.
family was kind of mixed in
These are
there.
the names I heard. I've never met some of these.
now,
Only
when all
Dakins.
these businesses were operating,
Yeah.
did the store owners close on Saturday or
No,
they,
no,
Never.
So,
Never.
No,
None of that.
and as a matter of fact, the stores in those times were open late on Friday night. That was the night that
That
the
Friday
stores
night was the night of
stayed
business,
open.
yeah.
So let me see, going up, there was also Gans this was all on the left
Yeah.
side of the street. On the right side of the street, if you were coming
Right.
from
I
Main
was-
Street, Leonard Cosberg had a dry cleaning establishment. Remember Leonard's?
Yes.
Leonard's Cleaners was
On Railroad
there
Street,
on
right,
Railroad
yeah.
Street. And then eventually he bought Tommy Graham's
Bar.
bar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he was running a bar, which is
Yes.
an unusual thing for a Jew to have, but he did.
He fit
Okay.
right in there, though. He really did.
Now, how does he figure in
Yeah, I
with
want,
any of your people?
why don't we hear
Who?
your family story,
Yeah,
Jack? Right?
They were here already when you came here?
No, no.
So,
But-
yeah, how did you, how did your
Through-
family,
Originally
Fine,
from,
sir.
from Sanesfield, my
Oh,
grandfather.
So they came with this Baron Hirsch's place?
Yeah, but you came from New Jersey, didn't you?
Yeah, but we're going back.
Oh, yeah, going back.
My grandfather bought from Ellis Island, the land agent sold him a farm in Sanesfield, the last farm.
Uh-huh.
He raised 8 kids there. And when-
this happened on Ellis Island, he was sold the farm
Yeah,
before
I
he
think
even.
the whole farm goes to $800.
Uh-huh.
And it consisted of 200 acres, cows, horses, and a house.
So, what,
But there was no electricity, and I think telephone came a little while later. And the kids, they had nothing to eat, so they all flew the coop. They all they spread out into New Jersey or Boston, wherever the
Oh,
kids.
oh,
They
was
didn't
that
stay
it?
home.
oh, we mean after they'd arrived there?
Yeah,
and-
when Elia was my grandfather. He bought the farm, and then they had kids on the farm.
Uh-huh.
There was no television.
Was
no
now-
entertainment.
Was, and you said he had there was a dairy and chickens and so,
Yeah.
how long did he farm
Well,
there?
he did until 1921, I guess.
Uh-huh.
Then my brother got drowned on the farm.
What?
Yes, in Sanesfield. There was a horse trot. They dug a hole in the ground for the horses to drink.
And he
the kid
fell in?
If it turned around for 1 minute, the kid tumbled into the thing and got drowned.
How old
Never
was he at
heard
the
that.
time? How old was he at the time?
Probably 2 years old.
Oh,
Oh my
poor
God.
baby.
I never heard
My
that.
mother never got over that.
I can
I could
understand.
understand.
I was the next child. So they moved from Sanesfield they bought a farm on Bow Wow Road in Sheffield.
Which is a very nice place.
And that thing would cost almost $2,000.
And so was that the place where you were raised?
Well,
pretty
I
much?
wasn't raised there. I was born in New Jersey. Because my mother was one of the
Originals.
Oh,
So I always loved the farm.
uh-huh,
So I always, if I ever had a vacation or a day off, I came to the farm.
uh-huh.
And I worked in the cattle business. My uncles, they were in the cattle business. I worked for them. I used to buy cattle.
And they were in
cattle.
Sheffield.
Yeah, in Sheffield.
Uh-huh.
Pensioner brothers.
Huntsville, yeah.
And you worked in that business too?
Yeah, I worked in that.
Yeah. Can you tell about what that was like? I mean, how you would go around buying cows?
See, at that time, there was no such thing as supermarkets or
Right,
big
yeah.
markets. Everybody, the cattle dealer or the real estate was the only ones that had contact with the farmers that lived by themselves, and they would buy everything, whether it was chickens or horses or cows, and bring them to market. The market usually was in Hartford, Connecticut, or Waterbury, Connecticut.
Well, there was a fellow who would come up to buy
Harry
the
Whittle,
beef.
right.
Yeah, right. That's the one.
We used to sell to him.
Yeah, right. He bought
Yeah.
from everybody around
Yeah.
here, the beef.
Yeah.
And the dairy cows we sold, they all sold to the
To the
different farmers.
Absolutely
Now,
right.
we imported most of our cattle from Canada in those years.
And Vermont, too.
Not so much from Vermont. We did buy things
First
from
came
Wisconsin.
from Vermont.
From Wisconsin,
Yeah.
we brought.
Yeah.
Harry bought ponies from Scotland. I mean, anything
Yeah.
and everything in the livestock business.
Now, I take it that, I mean, most of there were obviously some Jewish farmers around here, but most of the surrounding farms were owned by people who were not Jews. How did that work? I mean, was that ever an issue?
There was never an overt. It was more covert.
Actually, like, yeah, exactly right.
So
It was hidden, you know.
it was. Yeah, I mean, this was the thing. We knew that we were not welcome. We knew.
Is that right? I never
Oh,
knew.
Wheeler and Taylor for years would not sell to a Jewish person.
Whoa.
I
Oh.
remember many, many years ago, Molly Cooper went in there to buy, and she was born and brought up here. She was originally a
Yeah.
brakeman,
Oh.
and then she married a Greenfield, and he
Yeah,
died, and then
Cooper.
she married Eli Cooper from Pittsfield. I mean,
Yeah,
these
yes,
all
I know.
sound like nothing like names. They probably mean nothing to you in this context. But in any event, when she went into Wheeler and Taylor, they told her, Bob Wheeler years ago said, "Oh, we don't sell to people of the Jewish faith."
Was this like a
Like what
department
year would it
store or
have been?
It was probably after the Second World War,
As late as that?
as late as that.
Do you know who came up here? The one who had Jennifer House. He
The
said
Lipskys, yeah.
he came up and he bought his property. It has a lot of farm, a lot of acreage, 5 fireplaces. I've never seen it. And he said he paid, I think, $2,500 for it in 1945. How did he know to come up here?
I have no idea. They had started
In Monterey.
a business, a catalog business years ago, and then I guess they decided that they wanted to come up here. I don't know why, but Carl is still alive. You know, I bumped into him not too long ago.
Who's that?
Carl Lipsky.
Oh, I know. And he's got all his marbles.
Yes, he does.
But I think, now, here's a case. He was married to a Jewish woman in New York, and they came up here. And when we were in Cedarhurst, someone said, when you go there, say hello to Mrs. Lipsky. And we came up, and she was so busy. I said, Mrs. Lipsky, I was told to say hello to you. She was doing something. She said, oh, thank you so much. I'm busy. She never got out of that
They had
thing.
nothing
It's
to do
named
with the
after
Jewish
her.
people.
The
That's-
whole area has become, the whole family is not Jewish anymore. Only Carl. Or Seth. He had a son, Seth, who
And
was
Jed.
editor of the
They're smart kids.
Jerusalem Post. Yes. But he married a Gentile woman, whatever her name is.
Yeah.
And
And also Carl
Her name was
remarried a
Jackie.
non-Jewish woman,
I'm saying.
Swedish woman, yeah.
And also, I'd see him at Mary Voosa's house. She used to invite Philip and I and the Lipskys, the new wife. And there was nothing about him that seemed Jewish. I never knew. Did he ever join the temple?
Never.
Oh, I don't think
Never,
so. I don't
never.
think so. But I do know one thing. He would always bring back Dr. Brown's celery tonic for Harry.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah. That was
Bought
a
From,
food
from a
street.
New York deli or
Yeah,
something?
right.
Yeah. You can still get it.
Yes,
You know,
they
my-
even sell it here now.
Uh-huh.
They
No,
sell
my
it-
daughter-in-law gets it every Pesach. She always
Yeah.
gets it.
No, I was amazed. I went to buy, Sunday, went to buy bagels. This guy opened up a bagel place, and he is doing the biggest business in Great Barrington.
That's right.
Who's that?
You couldn't get that across from the big wide.
Yeah.
Oh,
bagel place.
let's go
Murray,
there.
whatever, is it Murray or
Oh, Jack Barris.
Martin? The bagel
Martin-
shop,
right across
opposite
from
Guido's.
the Friendly, excuse me, from Guido's.
Great Barrington Bagel.
Well, he does a hell of a business, and I go in there and I don't know one person that's in there. None.
Yeah,
none.
that's true.
I know.
Marvin, that's it,
Oh,
Marvin.
yeah.
I'm curious just a little bit more about the farming. From what I've seen in our community, there are a lot of
became
farmers
chicken farms.
around there, around where we
Egg
live.
farms.
Yeah, where we live too, there are still several farming families, and I've noticed how they sort of rely on each other. And I'm wondering how, with the Jewish farmers, were Jewish farmers interacting with the surrounding farmers,
think
or
no.
was it mostly?
It was, you couldn't, the
It was
kids,
individuals.
Yeah.
They were individuals.
Yes.
I mean,
So
you
they
know,
might
you
collaborate.
also heard the story that if they need a minion, they have 11 cars because nobody talks to anybody
Yeah,
else.
I know.
So this is the kind of a thing. These people were in business, and in many cases, they were in opposition to one another because one wanted a better price, one wanted to sell their goods at a different place, and so on and so forth. That's the way
That
it
was
went.
retail, but the farmers were not in competition with each other. They all sold
No.
to produce that went to New York City. You know, they had they separated the milk. Then days, butter fat was a big thing.
Right.
If you had a Holstein cow that had a low butter count, they wouldn't even buy the milk from you. They
Right.
wanted to have a high butter.
They
at
wanted
least 5 or
Jersey milk,
6%.
Jersey or Guernsey
Jersey,
milk.
Guernsey.
Yeah.
So they used to have the farmers used to take their milk to the creamery, and they separate the milk. They take the skim milk off and dump it in the river, throw it out as a waste product.
There was a dairy right on East Street years
right.
and years ago. That was,
And we used to deliver the milk into a separator, and they'd give the farmers the skim milk back to feed the calves or the chickens.
the pigs,
Or the
mostly
pigs,
the pigs.
mostly the
yeah.
pigs, yes.
How many cows are we talking about in some of these dairy outlets?
They had a
Like
lot.
50, 100?
Oh, God, we had them by the thousands, but we
Wow.
were selling them,
Yeah.
buying and selling.
Well, the Irish farmer had like 20 cows, but some big farmers had 100 cows. Of course, a dealer like Harry, they
And
had
Leo
many
Kaplan
cows,
was
yeah,
another
yeah.
dealer, and the two of them, I mean, they imported their cattle either from Canada or from different parts of the states. As I say, Harry also imported from Wisconsin, because this was a big dairy country, and there were lots and lots of cattle. In Canada, we bought back purebred cattle, because you didn't pay an import duty on purebred cattle. If we bought grade cattle, which was not purebred, then we had to pay import duties. Isn't that strange?
Yeah. Now, we came here in 1960
Yeah.
to look, and so we were looking in New York State, because if we lived in New York, you think that's where you should be.
Yeah.
Someone said, why don't you try Massachusetts? We said, Massachusetts? That's another state. It was right over the, right over the line. And we were taking drives. We never went to a real estate broker. We went down a road in Sandersfield. I saw Jewish names, and I said, Philip, I was here years and years ago. And that was it. But by the time we got here, there were hardly any Jews. There were the Alberts. She was the only remaining. Her husband was dead. There was Immerman. Do you remember the name Immerman?
No, I don't recall that name.
And what they used to do, they used to sell each other their houses up and back. I know Toby Jensky, and the Jenskys were here. Mm-hmm. Was that the family, Jensky?
Zetsky, yeah.
Yeah.
And but when we got here, there weren't too many. Although there's somebody who was in the someone lived in Sandersfield, who was part of the Henry Street settlement. Did you ever hear that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, New York.
I know. I always donated to that. And the one who was the director was directing that thing until maybe 2 years ago, and he retired. And I don't know if he ever comes up to the house. Sylvia German said she never sees him.
Now there was a shul in Sandusfield, right? I mean, the building is still there.
I don't know, was there? No.
Sure was.
But most of the kids, when they had to go to high school, had to go to Great Barrington. I think they bought it.
They either went to Searles or they went to Lenox. Some of the kids went to Lenox.
Okay, but the thing is, they had to stay, live out
Yeah.
because it took too long. Don't forget, we're talking about.
And also, the roads were not that good
Yes.
years ago, nor were they kept as clean as they are now. So that was one of the things. But there also was a large Jewish population in Winston, Connecticut. So some of the people from Sandusfield would go to Winston.
Oh, I
Was-
see.
and
Also,
was
in
there a-
Nassau, New York. Nassau,
No.
New York was the same
Was
thing.
another Jewish
Yeah,
community.
yeah.
I mean, there are sporadic.
Winston is right across the state line.
Yes.
Right, in
from
Connecticut.
Sandusfield,
Yeah, right, exactly. So there was, and still is in existence, a synagogue there.
Uh-huh.
There's another one in Armenia that's been there forever.
Oh, yes, I know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And as you say, in Nassau. I mean, these are all little towns.
Yes. That's what
And
he's
yet
writing
There were
about.
small enclaves of Jews in all of these little areas. I'm familiar with the ones around here, but I'm sure they're all over.
Now, I once went to a thing that Paul Lipsky, the psychiatrist, he was giving a talk about the Jews. He said Jews never lived here because there was no synagogue and no cemetery, so they couldn't live here. But the Truro was the first one that had Jews. Truro in
Rhode Island. Yeah.
and he said that his mother and father, his parents came here when they started something in Pittsfield.
Yes.
That's what he said. And then I suppose people began to trickle in. There were just maybe not too many.
In Pittsfield, it was mostly German Jews who came into that
Really?
area first, and they were the ones. They're also after the German Jews came into the area, they were mostly merchants, clothing merchants, and so on.
This was 1840s, 50s.
Yeah,
and,
right,
yeah.
and through there. Then there was an Orthodox Jewish group, which is still in existence. The Reform Temple is going strong, and so on. And then there also is a conservative synagogue in Pittsfield. So you had all the different denominations of Jews, if you want to call it denominations, but that's exactly what it is. And now this is Reconstructionist, which is a fourth.
Nobody mentioned was Axelrod. Now, Axelrod, he was this nucleus here. He came and we paid him absolutely nothing. I mean,
He's the person whose picture is.
Yeah,
Yes.
it was a shame what we paid that man. And he had the show. In order to make a living, he had to sell meat. The little
Kosher
shack.
meat. He was
Kosher
the
meat.
one, yeah.
Supposedly.
Nobody believed that it was really kosher.
Are you talking about Rabbi Axelrod?
Right.
Not only did he do that, but he went around to all the farmers and used to kill the chickens, because once a week
Yeah.
you'd have to have a kosher chicken. So he would take his car and run around to each farmer, and I think they got 10 cents apiece to kill the chicken.
So he was. Oh, go ahead.
And
And then
he,
for the high holidays, he would
he
sell
was-
for
Who
Passover.
brought the rabbi here?
This Jewish community that started this synagogue in I
Where
think
was he living then?
1926. I think he came from Europe.
Oh, because all the
And then he
children
was,
and he
went to the boys went to Harvard,
Yeah.
and the girls went to Radcliffe.
the part that gets me that if you had to have a
Pardon?
minion for 10 people,
No,
he had
thank you.
9 men and 100 women, he would not have that minion.
Get for
It
milk.
has to be 10 men.
that's
I mean,
right.
now you go to a show and the women run the whole thing.
Right, right.
You know, a woman wasn't
I was
allowed to go
talking-
up to the toe.
I know.
I was
up
talking
front.
to somebody not too long ago, these French Jews who were visiting
Yeah.
here in this country now, and they went to Temple Emmanuel in New York,
Yeah.
and the rabbi there is a woman, and they were absolutely livid.
Yes.
They walked out.
I mean, I could, first time I saw it, I
Yeah.
couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
But what's her name again? Lena Sadler told someone that they would never come to the synagogue if there was a Jewish person who went up to the bema.
No.
And she
Lena
did,
said
right?
Jack was okay, but Lena said if a woman goes to the Bema,
Then, that's,
she
well,
wouldn't
whatever
set
it
the
was.
precedent.
he had it
Well,
right.
he was
got it
pretty.
wrong, yeah.
Jack Sandler was pretty. He liked to fight. You know, he was always
He
took
was a
the
cute
other.
man.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he always took the other side of thing.
Yeah.
I don't know whether we're telling you the things
No,
you want
no,
to
this
hear.
is, I love this, and I like.
Oh, but let
know,
me tell you
sort of
about
getting to the
Rabbi
rub.
Axelrod. Rabbi Axelrod, this man was a saint in his own way. His wife was a wonderful woman. They had 4 children, and they brought them up wonderfully. Rabbi Axelrod, a lot of people in this community didn't like him because he didn't speak a good English.
Yes, I remember.
Right.
That was
Very
it.
bad.
Well English, whatever. Anyway, in any event, the teachers in town loved him. He was always for the teachers. For anything that the local teachers wanted, he would be very, very.
You mean the public school
vocal.
teacher, yeah.
In the public school. And these were mostly, in those years, they were Irish Catholics.
Mm-hmm.
Because we had the Irish Mafia in this town for many, many
Really?
years.
Ah.
You know, this was very Irish. Anyway, getting back to Axelrod, he was a wonderful man, but he was not appreciated. As a matter of
Never.
fact, he was, not only was he not appreciated,
never
he
called
was
him
also-
rabbi.
Scorned.
He was scorned.
They
No
never
question.
called him rabbi. Philip and I called him rabbi.
I called him rabbi.
Okay, so
Yeah.
some people. Thank you,
They
dear.
called him Axelrod, you know.
They called him Axelrod.
Right. In any event, he also would sell stuff for Passover. He would,
love that.
He had all kinds of matzahs and things like that, and he kept a list from one year to the next what you bought. If you bought less, he would remind you what you bought the year before. It didn't make any difference.
That's how he made his living.
Yeah, and of course he also had a different price for everybody. He charged you as you could afford. I mean, some
Right, he
people
can.
paid more than others, and so on.
exactly.
And I remember Hazel. Do you remember Hazel? Oh God. Raflowitz, Hazel Raflowitz, who was a non-Jewish woman who married a Jewish fellow, and I guess she turned Jewish, I think. Anyway, she used to pay the most. He didn't like her. So she always paid the most for whatever it was that she bought for Passover.
He used to have a barrel of herring in a place there.
And
That's true.
we have to
He
tell
did
you,
pull out that herring. Smell it.
we had over the Yontif.
Yeah.
We came
was
here
Pink
because
Hurwitz
in
too.
1960,
Pink
and we joined the
Hurwitz was
synagogue,
yeah.
and the rabbi for Rosh Hashanah used to get fish. Remember?
Yeah.
2 buckets of fish.
Yeah.
And I remember they were so good, and that I once asked him to buy me one. And we lived on Shentel Road,
Yeah.
which was a very fancy road then. And there was a big thing. It was a big tub. So I had some bottles out, jars out, and here I am putting the fish from the thing
You
into
mean
those
herring,
things.
herring.
Who comes? Henry Kimmel and his family.
Oh, God.
Super wasps.
Absolutely.
And they sat like they'd seen the movie, and they watched us. They watched me. And it was like, and I'm sure,
Thank you.
that they were like, but they were very far, and for Henry, he was maybe doesn't like Jews, but he came to my son's wedding, and they put a thing on him.
Yeah.
And Mary Vu said, take it off. But the thing is, when his brother committed suicide or something, or was killed, he looked to all the Jews for help.
For comfort, yeah.
Yes, he was, again, who was that? There was also somebody else
I don't recall. I remember something, but I don't remember just what it was.
I think they had a business, but a trucking business from New York up here.
Palmer, that was the Palmers.
Yeah, and
Oh, well, Kimball's also had a truck.
yes.
Yeah.
And I remember
Palmer's had
my
the bigger
son,
Palmer's bigger
who's now going to be 50, was about 6 years old. We had a horse, and he fell off the horse, and he broke his arm, Tedley. And so we had to take
I have
him
this
to
at home.
the hospital in Fairview. And Henry Kimball happened to be in the room. You know, he had something wrong with him, and he said to Philip and myself, you know, I'll take care of your son, although he was angry because he was a big person here, you know, like the trucking business, and he should have gotten a room by himself, but it was busy, so he stayed in the room with Tedley, and we got to be friendly with him. And my husband, we knew nothing about anything, but we decided we would rent a horse for the summertime.
A what?
A horse.
Rent a horse from someone in Connecticut. And the thing is, and Henry Kimball is talking about horses. You know, he had race horses. And Philip said, do you know how you keep a horse from running away? You put a tire on him or something. And he said, oh, is that right? And Philip said to me, Bela, you know, I didn't trust him, but my husband went up and down every weekend, and he saw those trucks going up. So,
Yes,
so Philip
right.
was telling him about it was, but we were very good friends, and his brother, either someone killed him
I
or
don't,
committed suicide.
something, I don't remember what the
Yeah,
situation
and
was.
I remember the Cosbergs were his friends too.
Yeah, well,
And
Another
So we-
thing, in addition to what Irene was saying, the country club, until really very recently, no Jews.
No Jews, absolutely.
no
was in
Jews or
19-
dogs. As a matter of
1970 or
fact,
something.
they had a sign out, no Jews or dogs allowed.
Yes.
Catholics
And that
too,
went
wasn't it?
back years ago. My son has the sign.
And also,
He
Rabbi
collected
Raxelrod's son David said that was true.
He was a caddy there. He
I know.
caddied there.
He said they had that sign, and by the time we came in the 60s, I lived in Cedarhurst. I don't know if you've ever heard
It's
of
on
Cedarhurst.
Long Island.
Yeah,
Five
five
towns.
towns. One of the 5 towns.
They are all up here now. Before, when we moved, they said to Philip, what are you going to do there? They don't know about teeth. You're going to clean their teeth?
Coffee
Oh, because
shop,
Philip
yeah.
said he would open up, like, he
A
was
practice,
retiring
yeah.
semi. And
I think those blood and
but
everything.
really, the thing is that, you know, we came here, and
Yeah,
I don't-
that also.
all kinds of things. But we lived in Sandersfield, and we bought an old farm, and we heard about it. There was a general store in Sandersfield, owned by a Jewish man and his family. And when Philip came in and we said, is there anything for sale here? And he said, yes, there's a Gould wants to sell a place.
He was looking for, this is for property for you.
No. He said to Philip, oh, I have a tooth that bothers me. Will you come in the next room? I'll give you a searchlight. Look at my tooth. I forget his name. But he moved. And so I wrote a letter to these people,
remember that. It
Gould,
was-
and there's also a Gould farm here.
Yes.
And the letter went to the Gould farm. And it went to the people who rented a house. They lived in Silver Springs, Washington, Maryland. And they said, we would like to sell the place.
Schenken.
If you
That
want
was
to,
the
if you want to
Schenken.
rent it, it's
Wasn't that-
I think so.
Yeah.
$1,000 for the summer. Or if you want to buy it, it's $7,500 for 100 acres, more or less. That's how it was.
Yeah, always more or less.
Yeah. So
And
that's,
this family in Maryland had been part of the Jewish community in Sandusfield and then left, or?
well, yeah, at that time, yeah, because all the Jews living, but when the Jews left, other people came in.
Oh, I see.
Germans came in, but everybody who ever came to the house that we bought, it was a very old house from 1720. but it was not a wealthy man's house. It was a poor man's house. And the thing is, everybody said, oh, yeah, we used to have sheep here. Or we used to have, it was a tiny house. But that's how they lived, the Jews. And we bought it from this Jewish family who lived in Washington.
Yeah.
And they said it was too much to make the trip. And
I think the family was Shankman, if I'm not mistaken.
what's the name?
Shankman.
Good
Really?
memory.
And also,
Yeah, quite a memory.
Yeah. Do you remember them?
I don't even have heard of.
and
Yeah.
the next farm from us was owned by two Greek men. It was owned by Jewish people before that, because the whole thing was Jewish, all up and down. But as they sold, Gentile people came in,
Yeah.
and they had a music camp. Did you remember that?
No.
I don't know if that ever got, it had hundreds of acres as Greek guys, and at one time they were going to do something. Our land bordered the Clam River. All the acreage went all the way to the Clam River, which is a schlep. And when the Greek boys heard that they would do something about the Clam River, they said to Philip, how about buying our property? And we worth a fortune. But we didn't, and it never really panned out. Never panned out.
Jack, do you remember the synagogue that was in Sandusfield? Was that still?
No, that was
Before your
my
time.
time. I was
Yeah.
1 year old when they
You can see it. if you
I
look
rather
at it.
imagine that they were the ones who had that synagogue who started this one.
Is that how that
I would
worked?
imagine so, yeah.
But in any case, as the two of you were growing up, this was the synagogue.
Yeah, this was
I
synagogue.
was born and brought up in Brooklyn. And it's when I married my husband, who lived here.
This
that
was
I-
the one you came to.
Right,
Yeah.
right. This
Yeah.
is where we.
Jack, were you bar
came to.
mitzvahed here?
No, I was actually I was born and brought up in New Jersey. I came only over here on the vacations, or when I had time off from school. After the Army, when I got out of World War II, then I was permanently.
Now, you were related to Rosalind
Rosalind.
Levine.
Oh, yeah, that's another family,
Yeah.
the Veen family.
Rosie's sister was my mother.
Aha,
Yeah.
okay, yeah,
Everybody was interrelated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
right.
It sounds as though they still are.
Well,
Some
most of them are
families-
gone at
Yeah.
this point.
But I remember when we came up, Irene was beautiful and very regal and queenly. And we always referred to her as a queen. She would walk
Hey, like that?
with her head up. Really, she had great charisma. Irene, that was you.
There's a picture of me and my husband.
Oh, that's lovely.
Oh.
That's a lovely picture. That's great.
1946. Probably.
Well, we used to have the drives for the state of Israel in our house. People would come to our house. I think you had it one
I
time.
came to one.
No. Harry and Irene gave to everyone who wanted money. I remember there were always people there with their hands out looking for donations, and they really were very
And if they
generous.
needed a place, they had their home.
Yeah, it was wonderful.
Now, I have a sense from Jack that even growing up in New Jersey, he liked being here.
Absolutely.
Was that true
Yeah,
about you and
that's
your
true.
transition from Brooklyn?
Well, we used to go to camp. My brother, my sister, and I. We went to camp in New York State, and then we went to camp in Pittsfield.
Oh,
And I went to Wacona, which was the girls' camp, and my brother went to Potomac, which was the boys' camp, and so on. And then my sister, who was a baby, went to Powhatan, and that was for the kids from 3 to 5. In any event, so we were here, and I think that's more or less what induced my grandparents to buy here in this part. And getting back to what I said before, they bought the property from a fellow by the name of Lopez. I can't recall, but he was in the real estate business. I don't remember what his other name was or his family, but at the time that my grandparents bought this farm, after they bought it, they got a letter from Wheeler and Taylor showing pictures of the property, and since it's just changed hands, you can have this. They would never tell my when my grandfather went in there and my mother, they would never tell them that there was property available.
That's exactly. We don't tell. If we weeded them out. It was Jews. They wouldn't show them all the property, just certain pieces.
Yeah.
Sure. They say there was no anti-Semitism. There is. It was hidden, like Ivy says. It was there.
So where would they show property? Would it be like only in Sandusfield or?
Well, no.
Yeah, I suppose so.
Whatever they felt like
Yeah.
selling, as far as that goes.
Yeah.
I mean, there was no set rule or regulation, but if it was a good buy, they wouldn't give it to Jews. That's for
You know,
sure.
I was in the Price Shop the other day, and I met this guy who used to be a president of Wheeler and Taylor. He was for years a tall.
Yeah,
Anthony was-
Snow.
I
Yeah.
said, "What you doing now that you retired?" He says, "I'm cleaning houses." He said.
That's right. He's doing all kinds of things. I mean, he's a very
Imagine
wealthy boy.
Yeah.
I shouldn't say boy, man.
But he was
So-
originally he was a janitor when he started for Wheeler and Taylor, and he graduated
It
into
was.
the.
They always said that he was Bob Wheeler's son.
Yeah.
Who is that?
Yeah.
Snow. I can't
That's
think
it,
of his
Richard
first
Snow.
name.
Dick
Yeah,
Snow?
yeah,
Dick Snow. Yeah.
yeah.
Snow?
Yeah.
Snow, yeah.
Yeah.
He's president
Really?
of Wheeler and Taylor.
Yeah, he's cleaning houses.
I see him every once in a while.
I'm surprised. I mean, I didn't
Now,
think he.
his mother, if I'm not mistaken, was Bob Wheeler's girlfriend for years and years.
And that's the one he
I
killed?
think that's the one he killed.
Well, he didn't kill her intentionally.
all
No.
the
He
things.
was parking with her. Parking
That's a
with
good
her
thing to
in the
talk about.
snowstorm, and he got stuck in the snow.
And she,
Really?
She
He went
helped.
to shake the car, and she was backed over him.
Oh, my.
No, he backed over her.
Oh,
Vice
how
versa,
horrible.
yeah. The whole town was buzzing there.
Yeah, well, we all thought it was done purposely. However, that has nothing to do with the Jewish community.
Sounds
So
like
how-
Peyton Place.
how,
I want to
Yeah,
tell you,
yeah.
my mother used to love stories about Great Barrington that I would tell her. It
Yeah,
was
you could.
really, she always
Sure,
called it
yeah.
Peyton Place.
How has, in your views of people, as people who've been in the community for years and years, how has the Jewish community in Great Barrington evolved? I mean, what are
Well,
some
I
of the
will
things
say
you've
that
observed?
at this point, as she said, that all the 5 towns are living up here now, I can't believe the number of Jewish people that are in this area who
Thousands.
That
are
belong to
recognized
Cyber.
Jews or who recognize themselves as Jews. We never had anything like this. If we had 40 families that were part of this synagogue, that was a lot.
Absolutely.
That was the whole thing. I mean, 40 families. Eisner, they have
Oh, I
their
see.
But that wasn't
services.
Jewish. Or was he?
Eisner Camp was Jewish, always Jewish.
Oh, yeah.
The one who had it before him. It was
Oh,
Kodak.
what was his name? He was,
Yes,
Railroad guy.
Vera Argentini.
Vera Argentini was his daughter.
Yeah, he was there at school.
Yeah, I can't remember his
For-
name,
for-
it just escapes
for
me at this
unfortunate
point.
children, yeah.
But they were Jewish, but they never admitted to
No,
it.
I don't.
Yeah.
I married a Gentile. Never
Yeah.
told him.
They were members of St. James, I recall.
Didn't one of them marry into Moskowitz, into the Steinberg family or something?
That's
That's the
the
one who got
Brickman.
divorced, yeah. Oh, Brick.
That
Oh,
comes
what?
down from Brickman because Holly Steinberg was Morris Brickman's daughter. And she married Larry Steinberg.
Now, what are all these people from?
Fancy
All these people from Cedarhurst, as you put it. What are they
Oh.
all doing here? Why,
Oh,
why did they?
I think many of the people came up here.
I lived
and
in
with-
Cedarhurst.
Yeah.
I couldn't wait to get away from them. Someone once came to my house. You know, I'm like very laid back. Have always been.
Yes, she has.
You know,
that's the truth.
And a woman knocked at the door and she said, Mrs. Schiffman, she introduced herself and she said, I understand your husband's a dentist and you have 4 boys. You dressed abominably. Also, we had a house
Sheila
that was
was
a
a
very
free
nice
spirit.
house. And when people would come to the door and I'd open it, they'd say, can I see the lady of the house? I said, you're looking at her. Okay. But it really was that kind of a thing. And those people are now coming up here, but they don't make any bones about the fact that they're Jewish, but they're arrogant, which I always thought that they were.
From the
Like when I
towns.
lived in Cedarhurst, I would go shopping. I would see a woman looking at the meat like she knew what she was doing. And one day I said to her, "Pardon me, what is it that you're supposed to look for in this meat?" She said, "Oh," and she walked away.
You said what to her?
And she walked away.
But what did you say to her?
Oh, she asked her,
I
what
didn't
are you
say
looking
it.
for?
I knew that
Like,
she
why are
wasn't
you
talking.
examining the meat? What are you
Anyhow.
looking for?
But it really was like a sad kind of thing when they came. They first came here, there was an Adams. Adams was a market.
Supermarket, yeah.
And
That
you know,
was
everybody was
Weinberg's.
very friendly,
The Weinberg
nice.
family.
And
A long way that
guy came over, I heard a
He came a
woman
long
giving
way.
him like
They all
about the
disappeared.
meat or something.
They all disappeared that
He
fast.
said to me,
No, they died. I mean, they died away.
he said to me, this, who was in the meat counter at that time, I remember his wife died. He
Barrington.
said to me, "Bela, what did I say to her that she gave me such a thing?" I said, "Forget it. She's from the Five Towns." And that was the beginning. And also, we became friends with someone who came up. They were very nice people. And he decided he wanted to join the country club. And we said, you know, they had these signs,
Kleiman?
the Reitmans.
Oh, the Reitman.
They let him join. And one time he invited Philip, and Philip didn't want to go and play golf there. But he said, "Oh, come on, play golf," you know, as his guest. They sent my husband a bill for playing there.
Even as Reitman?
Yeah. And now,
Do you hear from them? Are they
no. Oh, but they're still up here.
Are they
They're very
really?
wealthy, and
Yeah.
they've had, like, you know.
So what did they do to get in?
Huh?
Do you think? What did this particular
I think
family do?
I don't think that they knew they were Jewish.
Oh, I see.
No,
What was
no.
your last name?
Right.
No. They knew they were Jewish.
Uh-huh.
But the thing is, what
They
was it?
needed a
Norman
token.
They were
had
money?
a very,
Or what?
you know, he had a big business like, that's that English insurance company.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's something, very big name. And they came up and they bought a little house here, and they once called us and asked if they could, you know, come up and visit us. And it was snowing, so Philip said, I'll go and I'll get you. And they couldn't imagine that people could be so kind. And we were friendly with them for years
Yes,
and
I
years.
remember that.
And a few people began to come up, more Jewish people, and they let him join the club, and before you knew it, all the people were mostly Jewish who played golf. And
Well,
someone said to me last night,
Not really.
they did the wrong thing. If they knew that they needed people, because they would had too few people, why didn't they let the thing go to broke, and then Jewish people could have caught it? Someone said to me
exactly.
yesterday.
Exactly. I'll tell you, the situation was very, very interesting. They were very selective about the Jews that they invited to join the club. Now, I remember Leo Kaplan and Harry Moskowitz. We both received invitations to join
Really?
the club when they were having all kinds of problems
Oh.
financially. Of course, we would never join
No.
that club. I mean, I said I was on the hospital
Committee.
in the hospital auxiliary at that point, and I remember we were having a function out at Wyandotte, and I told them I would never go or
Yeah.
have anything to do with it because
No,
I
thanks, but
simply
I'll have my dog call you.
nothing. I
No,
wouldn't
but it
have
really
anything to do
is.
with it. But let's get back to why there are so many Jews who've come into the area.
Yeah.
These are people who, you know, you now have a different group of Jews. They are athletic. When Jews were not so terribly athletic, they ski.
And the women
they-
want to stay young forever, so they play
Right.
golf.
Right, and so on. So now these people came up to this area probably for
Other
skiing
reasons,
or for
Irene.
whatever the reasons were.
Because
And also-
ordinarily they would go to the Hamptons.
Yeah.
The Hampton was always, but the thing is, the Hamptons became
It was so
very
hard to drive
expensive.
out there. It was so difficult to
Catskills.
drive out there from the city.
Also, so they came here, and for a couple of, you know, some money, They began to buy property and build houses.
And they felt that this was cheaper in a way. It was less expensive to buy
And
property
now-
here than out at the Hamptons or wherever. But I also believe that there was a great influx with the .com situation.
So this
Many-
is a really recent.
Yes,
Yes.
quite recent.
Since the war.
Quite
Since
within the
war.
last 10 years, I would say. 10
Well,
to 12 years.
yeah,
Hever is,
yeah.
what is it? Hever is 20 years old or
Yeah.
25
I
years
don't know.
old?
Yep.
Something, but it
74.
started as a small, you know more about
Yeah.
how it
74.
started. Okay, 74. And it was around that time that for a long time afterwards, you didn't have a lot of people. And then it was just as things
But
changed.
one time we wanted the Heber to join with us here, and they didn't. They
No.
was
Oh,
too
that was
small.
horrible.
Yeah, it was an
Horrible.
awful situation. Anyway, there was such a, it was such angry times. It was really not very good for Jewish people to be fighting the way we were fighting. Well,
No,
anyway,
I didn't know.
Small, like
yeah.
nickel. It was,
But now, of course, Hever is so big.
Oh yes, they have a woman. They have
This,
2 rabbis.
yeah, right.
that woman rabbi, you can't put it. She.
They love
she
her.
is dynamic.
Everybody
loves
loves her.
I'm
She's
sure.
dynamic.
Now, where is this?
It's up on State
Yeah.
Road.
She's a one-man show.
She's a dynamic.
Yeah,
person.
she's very
I mean,
dynamic.
I can't see a woman in that position, but I'm changing my
But
mind.
what's interesting is her husband is also a rabbi.
Yeah,
He's
but
a
he
rabbi.
doesn't have anything. He's watching the
She
children.
outshines him.
They took the. He was a rabbi in Pittsfield.
I know it.
No longer.
Ahava show at
On Samuni.
It's awful.
She outshines him
and
by far.
they I guess they threw him out.
I know.
Well,
Isn't that awful?
Getting back
And
to
she
CAF.
is such a big thing. Every time I look, she's doing something.
Yeah.
Well, you
And
look-
there was someone who came up here, and when all the people came from the 5 towns, a wine rib, Simon Wine Rib, right?
Wainwright.
Yeah.
And his wife, and he was so knowledgeable about the Bible and everything. Did you ever hear him?
Yes.
And he could tell you everything, and he used to always be
Yeah,
here
yeah.
and talk about it. She never let him ever give a speech or talk at their temple.
Really?
Well,
Never.
let's stick
She
to
has a,
He
CAS.
just
but,
keeps it the way she wants it.
well, whatever.
She manipulates.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Oh, that's
You're right,
where
you're right.
we have been talking mostly gossip.
Yeah, but about
Let's face
CAS.
it.
It's old. It's
Yeah.
old gossip.
But
Yeah,
maybe
it's
you
all
want to
gossip.
go, well, she wouldn't know anything about it before. No.
What?
I mean, I was going to say he ought to go there and meet her. But the thing is, there's nothing she remembers about the Jewish people.
Oh, no.
Well, I have a question about going back to at least your farming experiences. Where besides the slaughtering of the chickens, were there any other ways in which your families would farm that were particular to being Jewish? Do you know what I'm saying?
No, I don't think so.
You more or less.
I don't
No.
think so
Followed
because
how-
I mean, in the case of my husband and Leo Kaplan, who were the cattle dealers, there was also Morris Goldberg, who was the cattle dealer. Do you remember him?
Sure do.
Morris, he had a slaughterhouse down on
And Louis
Sheffield
Levine.
Road.
And what about
yeah.
Jake?
How about
Jake,
milking on,
the
on
Penzers,
Penziner.
the Pensioner.
Yeah.
Jake, it was Jake and Sam, the
Yeah.
2 brothers.
Pension brothers.
Yeah, Pensioner
How about
brothers.
the Pyansons with the chickens out there?
Yeah, they were chickens. These, the ones that I've mentioned were mostly cattle, and that was the difference. But
Was there ever a conflict about milking on the Sabbath?
no.
Because
This was a different thing. This was economically important, and so if you had a shop, you didn't close the shop Friday night and Saturday. You kept it open, even on the high holidays.
And
few
people would come up.
closed.
We had friends
Yeah.
who were Jewish, and they didn't do anything, have temples or something. They were outraged when they came here and they saw all the stores that the Jews had were open.
Mm-hmm.
And Philip would not have, my husband was a dentist here.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is, he had a practice here, and they would say to him, how come you're closed and everybody, I can get shoes at
You couldn't afford to.
Stay closed.
oh,
to
but
be
so
closed.
what would
No.
they do? Miss 2 pairs of shoes?
That didn't
Well,
make
I
any
used
difference.
to
It was,
leave
it was
the
a
help run the store, and I would take off. I wouldn't work in the store in the holidays.
Yeah, well, the same thing. Nate wouldn't work in the store. Ruth had to work.
Yeah. Well, I had
And Herbie didn't work in the store. He went to synagogue, and Faye had to work.
Well, I always
Yeah, but the
had
thing
3,
is,
4
it
people
wasn't a
working.
nice thing for the
What?
people to
I always had
see,
many people
because they
working.
would say to
Yeah.
Philip, "How come you're Jewish and
They
you're,
had
you're
their
clothes?"
wives working, which was ridiculous.
Now, what kind of, you mentioned a store, what kind of business was this?
We had a country Macy's department store, country style.
Uh-huh.
We had everything: shoes, clothing, Woolrich clothing, hunting clothing.
Yeah.
The best.
Heavy clothing for farmers didn't have heat.
Mhm.
They bought dual fold clothing with half wool and half cotton.
Yeah, like the
Yeah.
Carhartt.
We sold a lot of that.
Uh-huh.
In fact, that's was my livelihood.
So here we are, 3 different people.
Yeah.
Her husband was a professional man. We did have a Jewish doctor in this community many, many years ago.
Then they say
Chesnow.
Who?
Chesnow.
I don't know, but they said there was someone, a dentist, who was Jewish, but he said he was not Jewish. Could that be true?
Smith, Arthur Smith. You're
Yes,
talking about.
yes.
He wasn't Jewish. They thought he was. Yeah. And they also said the same thing about Arthur Castle.
Really?
That, he
okay.
was
Yeah.
Jewish,
But he was German.
He was a German. And his family came about the time that the Nazis started to become in charge of things, and his family left Germany at that point. So everybody thought that they were Jewish because of
It's
that.
amazing.
Whether they were or they weren't is beside the point.
Maybe these guys had like 4 years of college, but whether your foot hurt you, your tooth hurt you, or your head hurt you, or your eye hurt you, or you had a baby. They would all take care of
It
everything.
was that or nothing.
You had 2 shops. You had one in Lee
Yeah.
and one here.
Yeah, 2 stores.
That was something.
But before he had a store, he had a truck, and he went around from place to place
Farmers,
selling
yeah.
out of his truck.
You.
Really?
So,
I actually went to Hillsdale and to Chatham and to Wassail.
Oh, over in New York.
Farmers
Yeah.
auctions, because there was no shopping
I
center.
never knew that.
Yeah.
I paid for the
I
book.
mean, this is like the old time peddlers, the
Yeah.
Jewish peddlers who traveled
That's
out
right.
west. This is, in a sense,
You know,
an upgrade from the peddlers.
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you something. You know about the Sandler family?
Who? The Sandler? What about them?
They had some daughters and sons.
Yeah,
The
older
daughter was married to an army officer, and he was killed on the base. They gave her money that he would get in his lifetime.
Yeah, millions.
And she was very smart and good looking, and she had somebody tell her what to do with the money, and she worked up a big business. She now owns, her name is Marlene Schiff. She owns an apartment for many years on Fifth Avenue opposite the museum.
up in the 80s.
Yeah, in the 80s. A whole floor.
Not,
And
she has
we
one
would-
daughter. Yeah.
And we were going to New York, and we'd see that Jack, her father, would be waiting for the bus. So we said, what are you waiting for? He said, I'm going down to visit Marlene. So we said, get in, we'll take you. And so Philip said, you know, that's such a guy's place. Who do you talk to? He said, I talked to the postman, I talked to the maintenance man. And her daughter, went to a private school and married, you know,
I don't know who she married now.
who's that Jewish guy, Soros?
Oh.
They said he was Greek.
George?
She married his grandson. And Lena said that when she goes to visit Marlene and her granddaughter, there's a butler and a chauffeur who takes her every place. So that's what happened to people who were just egg farmers. She was very
It was
smart.
the children. The children.
And the boys,
And Paul went into business with his sister.
yes, and he lives in the Hamptons. And the
And he
thing
also
is,
has a
good for
place out
them,
in Las
you know.
Vegas, I think.
But the thing is that
Enough?
what
No,
do you-
no,
No, no, no.
no. I was just trying to give. I didn't want to interrupt, but
Yeah,
I wanted to
yeah.
give him a reminder of
Yeah.
another question.
Okay.
That would be
No,
good.
no, but the thing is, I think there was someone else on that road who was did also very well, but I remember them particularly because we knew, and they were patients Phillips from Sandersfield. If someone died, they would call us to go to the cemetery. And one time I saw Marlene and Lena Sandler and with a man, and they were on the cemetery talking about something. And they introduced the man to me, and he was her. She had a plane. She flew up from New York here.
The Sandler's daughter.
I haven't seen her for ages,
Yeah.
but the thing is, she was a nice girl, you know,
Very pretty girl.
did well.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it sounds as though one reason that these farms that had been in existence didn't continue on is that
No.
people did too well, in a way. I mean, they sort
Well,
of...
they evolved.
moved
It
on.
was the second generation that evolved.
That evolved is the
yeah.
right word.
They went on to college when the others didn't,
Yeah.
you know, and this was a whole different thing. The second generation always is somewhat different from the first.
And when you say when the others didn't, you mean their parents hadn't, and also the
Yeah,
non-Jews in the community
cases,
weren't going
yeah,
off.
in
to
most
college.
cases, that's the way it was. And-
Yeah.
and-
Of
and-
all the merchants on the main street, hardly any of the children stayed in the business. I think mine is the only one. My son took over the business. Jack.
well, also the Gans, you know,
Yeah,
the
yeah,
Steinberg
It's a little
boys.
different because they split up and they're not the same, really. Yeah.
But anyway, that's the way it was.
But
And-
Moskowitz is.
Well, my son, my oldest son,
Yeah.
is in the cattle business, but he said it's a dying business. I mean,
I
it
know.
just,
Yeah.
it's just a dying business.
Yeah, the farmers.
And
They're
so
out west, aren't they, those cattle businesses?
Out west, there are no farmers, very, very few
Very few.
farmers left in
There are
this
corporations.
I
that
was
farm.
Now it's,
Farm,
you
yeah.
know,
I
now
belong
they,
to a thing, farmers trust or something, land, you know, that they shouldn't leave. I subscribe to that because I think it's wonderful that people have farms. And I know I live in Sheffield, and everybody holds on to the farms now because if they sell it, somebody will buy it and make houses up
yeah,
there.
do
So
development.
they get the land trust to take it, and they have to get people to leave
Give
it to
them.
them.
Yeah,
So we have, you know, there are people who are working to keep it like nice, you know, keep it the way it is.
as rural
Yeah.
as it used to be, but it,
Yeah.
it
I
will
don't
never
know.
be, I'm afraid.
We have fancy restaurants here. Now, people,
restaurants
even
than
people who
ours.
have money say it's more expensive here than in New York.
There are 50 restaurants around there.
That Pearls is ridiculous.
So
Food
does
is
your
terrible.
son do his cattle? Is he local?
He's
Yeah.
in Sheffield. He
Uh-huh.
lives in Sheffield.
And how far does he travel? Around?
Actually, he has just a few customers left because they've all pretty
Just a
much
few
left
farmers
the
left, yeah.
left the farming business because the taxes have become too much, and the price of milk has been too little. Although now it's the highest it's ever been.
Oh, really?
But this is the way it is economically. The farmers couldn't stay in business. It was better for them to sell their land, and they could live on the proceeds. So anyway, that's the whole.
And now property, when we bought our house, it had 100 acres. Now if you buy a house, if you get 1 acre, that's normal. If you get 4 acres, you have
An estate.
An estate. Isn't that incredible? So people come up, and of course, what is so ridiculous is I know a young couple, and they're supposed to be Jewish, because Laurel Tooze did some work. You know, she does that artwork, and she said they were building young people. They were in stock market or something, made a fortune, and they had all around the house, you do not trespass. I mean, why did they build it and have it up there? Everybody sees it. You know, it's a kind of a reverse something, snobbishness.
Uh-huh.
But you know who went up there? The Vilmos boys.
Oh,
We have some artists here.
yeah.
And the thing is, they're very curious. And they look through the windows. They said, oh, I don't care. We'll just go. But the thing is, and they, for the most, they build ugly houses, don't they? I don't see
know.
anything.
I don't know.
anything would be
Whatever.
nice.
I mean, everybody builds to their own taste.
Yeah.
You know?
And now,
And
like,
what is fashionable at the moment.
yeah, like where we live in Sheffield, it's an old town, and the houses on 7, the main street, are old white houses. You know, they're like from 18 something.
Yeah.
Somebody came up recently. I shouldn't say this, but I'm telling you. I mean, they bought this house. They made it look like a New York inside. They think it's wonderful. And the outside, with an old house, you don't have to do anything.
Guilty.
It's beautiful. But that's the lines. He has bricks. He has all sorts of things adorning that house. You don't even see the house. So I said to him, Jordan, you know, old houses do not need any embellishments. They are in themselves beautiful. He went out to build with stones and rocks and all kinds of shitty things.
You know, I must tell you all, at the end of this month, my great-granddaughter is going to be named here. They're having the naming ceremony here. That's my great-granddaughter.
Jordana had Jordana?
No, Mara.
Oh, Mara.
Mara Moskowitz, my older son's daughter, his oldest daughter.
Yeah.
My first grandchild, and she has my first great-grandchild.
And really?
Yeah.
And they're going to be.
She's going to be named here.
Wow.
You mean it's okay with them all?
I don't know. I mean, that's what they want.
Wow,
They
that's
must-
great.
There must
I
be
must
some
want
appeal.
I think it's the 28th or the 29th of this month.
Oh, no.
Will it be in the paper?
I don't know whether it'll be in the paper
That's
or
really
not.
very something because
in a week.
her daughter
Yeah.
came from a kind of the Headies were nice
Yeah.
people, you know, but all Gentiles,
Right.
married to Gentiles.
Well, there again was Ted Wyman, who was the doctor here. We used to think that he was Jewish,
Really?
and Ted Wyman is Paula's grandfather.
I have a question
right,
about, decades back you mentioned, that at one point you were lucky if you had maybe 40 families. So when children became of age to date, and to the extent that their parents wanted them to find partners that were also Jewish,
They didn't.
they just didn't.
Where were
The
your
parents
children bar
sort of-
mitzvahed?
Both my boys were bar mitzvahed in Pittsfield at Anchi
You
and
belong
Finnan.
to the synagogue there?
We belong to both.
Okay. That's right. Because my son, who was now 50, became 13 when he was here. And we had it at our house.
I remember.
No, not
I
at our
remember.
house. We had it at the synagogue.
I remember that.
And everybody loved it. Norman Reitman's had friends like from Lloyd
Right.
London.
George, what was George?
George Schwartz.
George Schwartz. I don't remember that because after the ceremony, a whole bunch came back to my house.
Oh, really?
The Schwartzes were among them.
Yeah.
And I remember saying to George Schwartz, "You are the most beautiful man I've ever seen."
Oh, handsome. He's
He
my.
was, and he had the most magnificent blue eyes.
Yeah, I don't know about that, but his wife, he is my older son's married
Father-in-law.
his daughter,
Yeah.
Lisa.
See, that's how,
Yeah.
some families got together. In some cases, the
Should I
boys
show you my
married
teeth
Jewish
or
girls,
what?
whatever. In some cases,
I'll show you my
the
elbow.
girls married
So
Jewish
hard.
boys.
Fine,
Camera
right?
coming so in your face.
Both
Wish
of
I
my
had.
sons married non-Jewish girls. My older son married from the Wyman to the Hetty to the Moskowitz family, and my younger son married a non-Jewish girl from Atlanta.
You mean Mark?
Mark, yeah. But Barbara converted years after they were married. She said that if her children were Jewish, she decided she wanted to be Jewish.
Really?
And I went to the mikveh with her in Charlotte. And Paula also converted.
Nice girl. Nice.
Paula converted, and it was at Anshia Munin that she had her bat mitzvah.
Yeah, so I suppose that
But I don't know how, we had this thing. My children could marry whomever they wanted. That's all right with me, as long as they were decent people. But the thing that this conversion for convenience was something that I never liked. The girls that converted, or the boys that converted just for the
Bonnie
convenience.
Namio married a Jew.
Yeah.
Bob Namio is Jewish.
Yes,
and
he's Jewish.
And she's Gayish. And she said to me, I would have been Jewish, but Bob doesn't care. So
That's
it's
right.
only all her children are Christian, married Christians.
Yeah.
And at the daughter's wedding, her mother-in-law, intended mother-in-law, had a son, someone who was a priest. And if he didn't mention Jesus Christ 25 times, it was offensive. And Bob Namio, the brother who was Jewish, I said to him, what do you think of that? He said, my brother is a schmuck. He should have listened to what the guy was going to say. They only had, and Buddy, she's only, and he's
He's a dope. You're right.
Yeah, and he's a very nice man.
Yes, he is.
She's a difficult woman, but a kind woman.
He's a doctor.
Yeah.
He's a doctor here in this community.
But the thing is, I mean, if he had said things, she would have been Jewish. She said she would have.
Mm-hmm.
It's like with my son. Well, anyway.
Well, this is more in the way of gossip than reality.
Gossip
One-
is reality. I
That's
mean,
right.
what else?
I mean, you can pick things out of what we're saying.
Yeah.
It
That's how
gives
it
you
works.
some history
You're
of,
just telling all
how
the
the
good stuff
evolving of
or
the
whatever.
Jewish community, what's happened. I mean,
Yeah.
many of the children who were born and brought up in the area no longer are here. They've gone someplace else because this doesn't give them a great deal.
No. All
Yeah.
the kids flew the coop. I had 4 kids. They all married Jewish, though. Great Barrington.
Yeah.
In Great Barrington?
In Great
And are they still here?
No.
No.
Only my son.
Oh, uh-huh.
He's running the business.
Your son who continued on the
Yeah.
business.
Yeah.
Yeah, and where did the others go?
One's in Manhattan. One's in North Carolina. One's in Boston.
So they're all over you. That's how it is.
Which one's in
My-
North
my-
Carolina? Where?
Lynn, Raleigh, North Carolina.
Oh, she's in Raleigh.
And then my daughter, my youngest daughter's an eye doctor in Boston. She's an eye in her clinic there.
And did that transition start when they went off to college and then they just didn't?
Yeah.
They didn't
In
return?
college, yeah.
Yeah.
Right. And my younger son, went to medical school in Atlanta, and that's where he met his wife. And then he's practicing in North Carolina.
Yeah. And also, Todd's son went to private school, and there was one Berkshire school. And Tedley, our youngest kid, went to a little school in Sandersfield. And I would go by, and I would see he was either raking leaves or something. And I said to Philip, this will not do. We have to send him to school. So we got him into Berkshire Country Day School, where her son went. And the winters were awful years ago. I remember, I said, one day at 1 o'clock, I almost slid into something with my car, and I called my friend, and I said, could Peter stay at your house? She said, of course. And she went and picked him up. It was that kind of great community, you know, like, and of course Irene was always very generous with everybody. Still is, right? Yes. And she has a wonderful reputation here. Queenly. I always say godly and queenly. Because I'm just like a shrimp.
Oh, I never realized that.
Well, I never told you.
No, I never knew that I was queenly.
You know, my husband was a dentist. I could have bought clothes. I never was interested. I went to Florida one winter,
Yeah.
and Irene gave me clothes to wear. Remember?
Yeah, I do.
You know, it was really amazing, you know. So there are good things.
Yes. there were many, many good things about
Yeah.
this community, and they were, like any other community. It had its ups and downs and so on.
The amazing part was when we had the show here, you got together, there always was a fight. These old guys there wasn't a time we went to the show when somebody Mickle didn't fight with this guy or this guy.
Yeah, but I will say one thing. When we had a function, even with our 40 families, we would have a dinner here or whatever. Everybody worked and everybody loved it. It was wonderful.
But why they fought for it, I don't know.
I
It wasn't pleasant.
I think Philip and I ate at your house almost every night or every other night.
Well,
You
we
know-
ate at your house quite a few times, too, on Chum Knoll.
hardly. But the dining room was huge, and everybody, I mean, they really had a great reputation.
Now, what happened when Rabbi Axelrod, did he die when he was
Yes,
still living
yeah.
here?
Yes,
So
yes.
And then
His
after
wife died before him,
Yeah, before
many
him.
years before him, and I think that she was buried somewhere in New Jersey, if I'm not mistaken.
I see there's an Axelrod
And he's
at the
buried
cemetery.
here.
Is that
Rabbi
him?
Axelrod is buried.
And
here.
his son? Yes.
Oh, yeah.
You know, my
Irving,
son.
David.
And Edie too.
Yeah, David, yeah.
Yeah.
My son is a root canal therapist in New York City, and he has a patient who's a biochemist and has a house in Great Barrington. And he said for years he wanted to meet David. He said he never got a chance to meet him. David was always so big. David became New York State Health Commissioner,
Right.
the rabbi's
This is the son of, okay,
Yes.
yeah.
and he wanted to meet him. And the guy said to Philip, to my son Hank, he said, "Do you know? I bought a plot in a cemetery, and I'm going to be buried next to him, and we're going to be buried next to she and her husband and family. Every time I go to see my husband, I always look. We always know where it is because Harry's got that thing, and I say it's right there."
Where is the cemetery?
We have a
in-
cemetery right off Stockbridge Road.
Very nice.
We have a...
Years ago, I came home one day and Philip said, "I bought us some property." I said, "Yes?" He said, "I bought us a plot." And that's where we are, Isn't it? And I've gone there. Yeah.
Wasn't there a movement by some Jewish people in Sheffield to have a
They
cemetery?
have one too.
We did.
Yeah.
But the thing is, we didn't want.
Yeah.
I mean, the Jewish people.
We have the one here in
And
Great
it's,
Barrington.
it does me so much good when I go to see Philip. I see names of people
Oh, my God, everybody's there.
that are no
Yeah, 'cause
longer here.
you go, you say hello to this one and that one and the other one. I talk to Harry. I go up and I talk to him, and I tell him what's happening with the family.
That's right.
And
Yeah.
speak to Susan. My daughter is
I
there,
know.
too. Yeah.
Has a daughter who's buried. She's in this book. I saw that.
Yeah. She's wonderful. And her daughter is wonderful, Jordana. This is the one that I brought up. And
What is she doing?
Jordana's working on her doctorate. She should be finished by the end of this year, and then she and her husband hope to have a child, have children.
It's going to have flaming red hair, right?
And I,
Oh,
on
yes.
the other
I
hand,
imagine so.
my son and daughter-in-law got married at the same time, just about the same time. Stephen and Elisa, the Schwartzes that she spoke about. And they had a daughter, Emma, who must be like 30, right? 29 or 30.
Yeah.
And I also met someone at my friend Julie's house who was her friend at school. I never told.
Of my daughter?
Yes,
Of Susan?
yes. I'll have to get the name and tell you. Anyhow, Emma became very religious. They lived in Colorado, and because Stephen was a mathematician. He taught, at Boulder, and then at some other place, and he's very interested in music. So they decided that they would leave. Where is it? Pikes Peak. Where Greenbrier. You've probably been to the Greenbrier. Colorado Springs.
Yeah.
Yes. And so he went looking, and they were going to either go to East Coast or West Coast, where they're Jewish people, because when they had music at his school, he would go down, he would get them, And they would come up, and he loves music, you know. So they moved to Boston, and this man she's talking about, the father, saw my son through Wharton School, or one of those schools, you know, businessing. And he lives in Boston, and his daughter was 4 or 5 at that, maybe 5 or 6 years at the time, and she was so angry they took her away from Colorado because, you know, she had friends there. Anyhow, whatever it was, she became very Jewish. From her mother and father, her mother is now has very kosher, Lisa is. And if you know, you have to know that it's a red towel or blue towel, you know, that
Yeah,
kind of thing.
really.
And Emma also was very religious. And Emma, when she graduated, she was at Harvard. They sent people around to, you know, get people from, you know, from some of the schools to come to their place. Leo Burnett, that's an agency, advertising agency in Chicago, but it's all over. And they would say that she would become an account executive. And when I was young, I once worked in an advertising agency, and they were very grand then, you know, that was the heyday. And I said, Emma, you're going to be an account executive. She stayed there 4 years or 2 years, and on the day that she became an account executive, she gave in her notice. And they said, Emma, you're going to be a wealthy woman. When you're 50 years old, you're going to make a lot of money. She said, that's not what I'm interested in. She came back to Boston, in Cambridge, and she went to, she got a job weeding gardens. I suppose, like a grandmother. And, you know, and then she decided that she would go to school. She went for 4 years to whatever it was, 3 or 4 years to Harvard to get architecture and landscape. And then she just got her, Philip, my husband, lived to see her, you know, become that. We were at the graduation. My granddaughter, who is very frum, is marrying a Catholic boy.
Could be worse.
And what's going to happen? And what is he going to convert?
No.
Is she
No.
going to convert?
No.
No. Okay. But they're not.
Philip would have been devastated.
Well, these
But the
things.
thing is, and her mother said, it doesn't matter because he's a good human being. And he's a gardener. She met him when she went to the thing. He's a gardener. And Philip thought, oh my God, Emma will marry a rocket scientist and you just go after them. But she said, this guy is very good and loves his parents, loves his grandmother. She said, what else do I need? He's a good human being. And she's happy
There's
to
a lot
marry
to that.
him. And they're getting married someplace, but a Jewish wedding, and a Jewish guy is going to be the thing. And she said, and she buys kosher meat. Her husband, you know, Mark goes and gets kosher meat. But the thing is, I don't know. I wanted to ask when we had that thing upstairs about it. I mean, I'm devastated. I don't say anything to anybody. But how do you do such a thing?
Look,
it's a little
Mara,
bit the state
my
of the
granddaughter, whose daughter is my first great grandchild, is married to a Native American.
Yeah.
But they're Jewish. They were married by the rabbi, and they will maintain a Jewish home and
Yeah.
so on. Now, she's the only one in that family that married a boy and was Jewish. One is married to the Harrington boy. They're not Jewish. Carrie, who
Yeah.
has the shop downtown, and the younger one is married to Paul Pfeiffer, who is in the Marine Air Force.
So the thing is, so we both, you know, but Philip was my husband was very Jewish.
So,
Well, these are
And
about that.
he was devastated. I mean, but he doesn't know. After he
Yeah.
died, they decided that they would get married.
Well, maybe she'll
Tell me
influence
about
him.
Lisa's sister.
She married a Gentile boy, but she's bringing up her son
As
Jewish.
Jewish?
Yeah. here in
She
town.
was arty, wasn't she? She was.
You should see she got thin. She's
Oh,
beautiful
really?
looking.
Yeah.
The thing is, I suppose this is what's happening. You could also say it's becoming a different kind of a world.
Well, one interesting thing that I've come across recently is based on sort of population surveys. It's one of these good news, bad news sorts of things, and the bad news being that just according to the census, since 1970, the Jewish population in the United States has gone down, 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 down.
Yes.
On the other hand, the other side of the coin, there are more Jewish communities
Yes.
now
Yeah.
than there ever have been.
I know.
And that's in part, I think it's actually the result of, among other things, so much intermarrying, and then
they had to.
Jewish communities form around interfaith families and families like this. So it cuts both ways, I guess.
Can I just tell you something too? I'm not Jewish, and I completely feel like the Jewish tradition has added to my life in a way that I can't even explain to you.
Do you live here?
This is my husband.
So you
And
live. Oh,
he's
okay. I
Jewish,
didn't know
I
that
am
you-
not, and our daughter is going to be bat mitzvahed
Yeah,
this
so
next
that
year.
I suppose. Yeah.
And just to assure you that
Yeah.
it can come out okay. And it's the state of the heart. God sees the state of the heart, and if this man is a good man,
Yeah, that's the important thing.
Well,
and,
that is the important.
maybe he'll convert.
I was in Cherry Hill, New
That
Jersey.
could happen.
My nephew lives there, and they're all young Jewish couples. A lot of the converts, and they're more religious than the Jews ever were.
I've heard that.
So
Yeah,
very
I've
hard.
heard that
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
I mean, they do tell me things that I've never heard of before.
I suppose there's no saying how it
Ladies and
turns
gentlemen,
out.
this has been very, very
Yeah.
interesting. I hope it's been helpful to
It's been
you.
wonderful.
I have
Yeah,
to go.
thanks.